The Luminara Gala was the most prestigious event in the known galaxy. Representatives from 200 star systems gathered aboard the massive orbital station that floated between Earth and Mars, a neutral ground where diplomacy sparkled as brightly as the champagne. Lisa adjusted the neural translator behind her ear and surveyed the grand hall with her 3 eyes, each one processing different wavelengths of light. Her crystalline skin refracted the ambient glow into dancing rainbows across her ceremonial robes. She was here as ambassador from Zeta Crystallis, a responsibility she bore with pride despite the weight of recent tragedy. Her mate had died in a transport accident 6 months ago, leaving her alone with their infant, Cree. The child was currently secured in a biostasis carrier on her back, sleeping peacefully in the environmental chamber that kept him comfortable. Lisa moved through the crowd, exchanging pleasantries with various dignitaries. The humans fascinated her most. They were so fragile, so brief in their lifespans, yet they had achieved interstellar travel through sheer determination and creativity. She found herself drawn to a quieter corner of the hall where the crowd thinned, seeking a moment of respite from the overwhelming sensory input. That's when she saw him. Alex stood near a tall window overlooking the curve of Earth below, gently bouncing a human infant in his arms. He wore a simple but elegant suit that seemed slightly rumpled, as if he'd dressed in a hurry. His dark hair was tousled, and there were tired circles under his eyes, but his smile was genuine as he cooed softly to the baby girl in his arms. What caught Lisa's attention wasn't just the man himself, but the way he held the child. There was such tenderness in his movements, such instinctive care. The baby began to fuss, and Alex immediately reached into a bag at his feet, pulling out a bottle. He tested the temperature on his wrist before offering it to the child, who latched on eagerly. Lisa found herself walking toward them, drawn by something she couldn't quite name. "Excuse me," she said, her translator converting her harmonic frequencies into English. "I hope I'm not intruding." Alex looked up, startled. His eyes widened slightly at the sight of her alien form, but then his expression softened into a warm smile. "Not at all. Just trying to keep Sophie happy while I pretend to understand galactic politics." Lisa's third eye focused on the baby, nodding the peaceful contentment on her tiny face as she fed. "You are doing well. She seems very content." "Thanks," Alex said, shifting Sophie slightly. "I'm Alex, by the way, Dr. Alex Chen. I'm here as part of Earth's medical research delegation, but honestly, I'm way out of my depth. I'm a pediatrician, not a diplomat." "I am Lisa, ambassador from Zeta Crystallis." She gestured to her back. "I also have an infant, my son Cree." Alex's face lit up with interest. "Really? How old?" "Approximately 7 of your months in equivalent development." "Sophie just turned 6 months last week." Alex's smile dimmed slightly. "I've been doing this alone since she was born, her mother. She didn't want to be part of this." "I understand," Lisa said softly, her voice carrying harmonics of sympathy that needed no translation. "My mate died 6 months ago. I raise Cree alone now." A moment of understanding passed between them, transcending species and culture. They were both single parents navigating an impossible universe while trying to give their children the best possible start. Cree chose that moment to wake, emitting a high-pitched harmonic cry that made several nearby glasses vibrate. Lisa quickly moved to a seating area, Alex following instinctively. She opened the biostasis chamber and lifted her son out. His crystalline skin was softer than hers, still developing its full refractive properties. His cries intensified. "He's hungry," Lisa explained, reaching for the nutrient synthesizer in her diplomatic pouch. But her hands trembled slightly, a sign of the exhaustion she'd been hiding. She'd been awake for 37 hours straight, managing crisis negotiations on behalf of her planet. The synthesizer slipped from her fingers. Alex caught it reflexively, his human reflexes surprisingly quick. "May I?" he asked, holding up the device. Lisa hesitated. In her culture, allowing another to feed your child was an act of profound trust, reserved for family. But something in Alex's gentle competence, in the way he naturally balanced his own child while helping another, made her nod. Alex studied the synthesizer for a moment, his medical training helping him decipher the alien interface. Within seconds, he'd activated it correctly. The device hummed and produced a crystalline bottle filled with luminescent nutrients. He handed it to Lisa, but she swayed slightly, her exhaustion overwhelming her. "When's the last time you slept?" Alex asked, concern evident in his voice. "Sleep is not a priority when your world's mining rights are being negotiated." "May I?" Alex asked again, this time gesturing to Cree. Lisa's 3 eyes widened. No human had ever held a crystalline infant. Their physiology was completely different. Cree's body temperature fluctuated based on emotional state, and his skin could produce sharp edges if he became distressed. But Alex's eyes held only kindness and understanding. Another parent offering help to a fellow parent. Lisa nodded. Alex carefully took Cree in one arm, still balancing Sophie in the other with practiced ease. He settled both infants against his chest, supporting their heads with the natural instinct of someone who'd done this countless times. Then he brought the crystalline bottle to Cree's mouth. The crystalline infant latched on and began feeding, his harmonic cries subsiding into contented thrums. His skin softened and glowed with a warm blue light, a sign of comfort and safety. Around them, the gala continued, but several delegates had noticed the unusual scene. A human holding an alien infant, an ambassador trusting an outsider with her child. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. "That's Ambassador Lisa's son. A human is feeding him. I've never seen cross-species childcare before. The crystallines never let outsiders touch their young." Lisa felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on them. Her diplomatic training screamed at her that this was irregular, unprecedented, possibly even scandalous. But her exhausted mind and grateful heart overrode protocol. "Thank you," she said quietly, sitting beside Alex. "No problem," he replied, smiling down at both bobbies. "They're surprisingly similar once you get past the obvious differences. They both just want to feel safe and loved." A Zeta crystalline elder approached, his ancient form glittering with concern. "Ambassador Lisa, is this appropriate?" Before Lisa could respond, Alex looked up calmly. "Forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn, but I'm a pediatrician. Children need care, comfort, and nourishment. Species doesn't change those basics. And sometimes parents need help. There's no shame in that." The elder studied Alex for a long moment, his multiple eyes processing this human who spoke so confidently about universal truths. Then, to Lisa's amazement, he laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a crystal cave. "The human speaks wisdom," the elder said. "Perhaps we have been too rigid in our traditions." Word spread quickly through the gala. Within an hour, the image of Alex holding both human and crystalline infants had been broadcast across the galaxy. What happened next was unprecedented. Delegates from other worlds began sharing their own stories of single parenthood, of struggles with childcare while managing diplomatic duties. A Andromedan counselor confessed she'd nearly declined her position because she couldn't find care for her offspring. A Martian representative admitted he'd brought his child to negotiations hidden in his diplomatic case because his culture viewed parental duties as weakness in leaders. The conversation shifted. What had been a gala focused on trade agreements and territorial disputes became something else entirely. A dialogue about family, about the universal challenges of raising children, about the need for systems that supported parents rather than forcing them to choose between their responsibilities. Alex, still holding both bobbies, found himself at the center of an impromptu coalition of parent delegates from across the galaxy. They gathered in a circle, sharing experiences, offering advice, and for the first time in galactic history, acknowledging that perhaps the needs of children should be considered in diplomatic policy. Lisa watched in amazement as hardened negotiators cooed over Sophie and Cree, as warriors shared stories of midnight feedings, as beings from 100 worlds found common ground in the universal experience of parenthood. The Grand Chancellor herself approached, a towering figure from Rigel 7. Ambassador Lisa, Dr. Chen, what we are witnessing is remarkable. Perhaps this gala should mark a new beginning, not just for trade agreements but for family policy across the Allied systems. Alex looked at Lisa, who looked back at him. Without words, they understood what the other was thinking. "May I make a suggestion?" Alex said, his voice steady despite the attention of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Sophie had fallen asleep on his shoulder, as had Cree. "What if we established a galactic family support initiative? Standardized parental leave, childcare facilities at diplomatic stations, support networks for single parents across species lines." "We could start an exchange program," Lisa added, her voice gaining strength. "Different worlds have different approaches to childcare. Sharing those could benefit everyone." The Grand Chancellor nodded slowly. "This is not what I expected from tonight, but it may be exactly what the galaxy needs." As the evening continued, Alex and Lisa found themselves drafted into an emergency committee to draft the framework for what would become the Galactic Families Act. They worked side by side, their sleeping children nestled in a shared care pod that had been hastily provided, bridging not just the gap between their species, but between old ways of thinking and new possibilities. "You know," Alex said during a brief break, watching their children sleep peacefully together, "I came here tonight feeling completely out of place, like I didn't belong in this world of grand politics and galactic importance." "And now," Lisa asked, "now I think maybe the galaxy was missing something. Maybe we all were." He smiled at her. "Maybe what shakes entire galaxies isn't always the big dramatic moments. Sometimes it's just two parents doing their best and realizing they don't have to do it alone." Lisa's crystalline skin glowed with warm colors, her species equivalent of a blush. "On my world, we have a saying, a child raised by a village becomes a bridge between worlds. I think tonight, we built a village that spans galaxies." "To bridges," Alex said, raising an imaginary glass. "To bridges," Lisa agreed. When the gala ended in the early hours of the morning, the Galactic Families Act had been drafted and signed by representatives from every major system. But more than that, something fundamental had shifted in the way the galaxy viewed itself. The image of Alex holding those two bobbies, one human, one crystalline, became the symbol of a new era. As they prepared to leave, Alex turned to Lisa. "Would you? I mean, if you're ever on Earth or if I'm near your system, maybe we could." "Yes," Lisa said simply. "Sophie and Cree should know each other, and I would like to know you better as well." They exchanged contact information, their respective technologies adapting to make communication possible across the vast distance of space. As Lisa carried Cree back to her ship and Alex took Sophie home to their apartment in New York, both felt something they hadn't experienced in months: hope. Not just for themselves, but for their children, for the galaxy they would inherit. One moment of kindness, one gesture of trust, one simple act of feeding a baby. That's all it took to shake an entire galaxy and remind everyone in it that, regardless of how many eyes they had or what element their skin was made of, they all shared the most important thing: love for their children and the hope for a better future. The stars continued their ancient dance, but below them, something new was being born. A galaxy learning that its greatest strength wasn't in its weapons or its treaties, but in its willingness to care for the most vulnerable among all its worlds. And it had all started with two tired parents and their hungry bobbies at a gala where neither quite belonged, until they did.